I'm not really one to do things like this, but for the sake of experimentation alone, let's give it a shot. I noticed that 6% of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you're in that 94% who aren't, I'd really appreciate it if you would like, share, comment, subscribe, notification bell, the whole 9 yards even if you want to. And if you don't, that's cool too. Cool? Cool. Alright, on to the show.
Here are some high-speed tough guys from Purgatory Beach. Bad Religion.
We got the American Jesus, see him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus, he outbuilt the president's estate.
I gotta be honest with you people, I am not the biggest fan of punk music. If all I wanted out of my music listening experience was incessant banging, unintelligible yelling, and butthole smell, I'd eat at Taco Bell. I think if punk fans were truly honest, for every Ramones and Descendants, bands that don't sacrifice melody at the altar of aggression, there's about 15,000 interchangeable bands who think musical variety is when their bass player does too much heroin. But I do like a fair share of punk bands, and the best of the bunch has got to be Bad Religion, melding mighty melodies with powerful punk power, all the while singing about social ills. Now, you've been warned up front, I am no sociologist. I am not going to go over every lyric in English teacher style definition, and if that's a problem, well then I'm sorry. That you have nothing else better in your life. But it's the retrospective, and it's all about the music, so strap in for Bad Religion. Yes!
Well, there was a great friend of mine named Tom Clement who was also an outcast. He was one of the key figures in the evolution of Bad Religion because he was a very good friend with Brett Gurwitz.
He introduced me to Jay and Greg. He said, hey, you guys should be in a band together, because I played guitar and Greg sang, supposedly.
Formed in the year of our Lord 1980 by high school students Greg Graffin, Brett Gurwitz, and Jace Bentley and Ziskraut, with the release of their first EP emblazoned with their iconic Crossbuster logo, Bad Religion were born.
The first time we ever rehearsed was in our original drummer Jay Ziskraut's mom's living room.
We would bounce around from house to house until whose ever parents got tired of us being there.
We didn't go very long without a name. I think, we had a few rehearsals.
Well, there were really like 6 or 7 others, and they were so horrifyingly bad. I'm glad we didn't choose them.
Head cheese. If you're going to call it head cheese, you might as well call it smegma. That's even more punk.
And like a lot of young bands, they were full of piss and vinegar and low on cash. Recording the first half of what would be their debut album for free, lucky kids, and then returning a few months later with a $3,000 loan to finish it up, but not before losing drummer Jay Ziskraut, who would be replaced with roadie Pete Finestone. Don't lose this cat's name, as he will return in Avengers Endgame, as well as Germs guitarist Greg Hetson. And now we get to How Could Hell Be Any Worse? Look, it's not good, but at the same time it's not bad. You can tell this album was written by people between the ages of 16 and 18. Influences worn well on their shoulders, rough around the edges, and Greg Graffin's voice really hasn't blossomed into that bellow that I love so much. But at the same time, it's not a 5-alarm failure. If you squint real hard with me, you can see glimpses into the band's future output, especially in the lyrics. Lyrics like these, written by bands this young, are usually mommy, society is awful crap, but you don't even get that right from the outset with this band. Their lyrics are as pointed as ever, especially on songs like White Trash, Second Generation.
White trash, second generation. White trash, second generation. White trash, second generation. Diagram clarification.
And really, my biggest gripe with How Could Hell Be Any Worse is that the band sounds like they were held upside down when recording this album, starting off the first half with a lot of forgettable fare like Latchkey Kids, except of course for the concert staple Fuck Armageddon, This Is Hell, and then you get to the latter half of the record and you get awesome songs like, White Trash, Second Generation, American Dream, and Doing Time. It just sucks that I had to wade through a fucking ocean of shit to get to them, but all the while, it's still a great album for a great band. How could hell be any worse? Well, I'll tell you how. debut album sold pretty well considering it came from a literal bedroom label and the band had acquired a fresh new fan base. You'd think now that they would double down on the punk sound and keep trucking along, but you would be wrong. Into the Unknown. Never heard of it? Well, the band was hoping you hadn't, as this thing has been MIB memory wiped from all physical and digital media sites to never see the light of day again. But why? Well, you heard that opening clip. And no, I'm not pulling your leg. That was literally Bad Religion, trying to sound like Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. You see, Graffin and Guritz thought the success of the debut album was a fluke, and really weren't taking things seriously when it came to recording their next album. So when Brett acquired a synthesizer and wrote songs around it, the finished material actually caused Finestone and Bentley to leave the band. That should have been sign number 1. Acquiring 2 new dudes to fill the vacant slots, they went into the studio and recorded Into the Unknown. And from that opening synth swell like an airsoft round in the nads, you know you're in for a thing that should not be. I can just imagine a Bad Religion fan, after listening to How Could Hell Be Any Worse, picking up this album, putting it on their turntable, being like, this new Bad Religion album's gonna rock, crushing a 6-pack of cheap 80s beer, and then hearing this. Cringe. Everything from the music, the lyrics, the tempos, it's just no. Bad Religion. I get it now that hindsight's 2020. Ooh, sorry if that made you cringe, pussies. And the band have shit on this album more than Indian sidewalks. But if there is one lone needle in this haystack, it's that Greg Graffin's voice has begun its metamorphosis and the band have introduced their signature harmonies, which I learned are actually called the oohs and ahs.
There was a man who banged his head against the wall.
But both of these elements are in their infancy and thankfully weren't aborted like the sound on this piece of shit album. Best track? No. When an album causes a band to break up, you know you got a clunker of massive proportions on your hands. It's worth giving it one listen for curiosity alone, but after that, run, don't walk from Into the Unknown. Next.
You know, when you're 15 years old, the first thing you think about is how can I piss people off, you know? And it's very easy to piss people off when you're 15, especially it's easy to piss off your parents. But as you get a little older, or as I've gotten older, I've looked back on the symbol of Bad Religion as still having some meaning, but I wish it wasn't so offensive to other people, because other people could benefit from the ideas, I think, that we've laid down.
The breakup didn't last long, however, as Greg Graffin got Greg Hetson and Pete Finestone to return to the fray to record the hilariously titled Back to the Known EP, which actually contains one of my all-time favorite Bad Religion songs, Along the Way.
Now we go as we show that the morals we must know will be shaken and mistaken by the falls along the way, but forget.
And speaking of favorites, when Jay Bentley and a freshly sober Brett Guritz returned to the fray, punk rock murder was committed in the year 1988 with the album Suffer. Bad Religion didn't just come back, they roared back, harder, better, faster, and stronger. Melodic, meaty, whiplash-inducing punk with production that doesn't sound like it was recorded in a garbage can across the street. Oh, but lo-fi production is punk, Liam. Wait a minute. You're right. I can actually hear the articulation in the guitars without pressing a conch shell to my ear. The vocals aren't buried like E.T. video game cartridges, and the drums actually sound like cannons and not a monkey banging on pots and pans. Why, this simply won't do. Suffer is an amazing album, without question my all-time favorite Bad Religion album. The production is pristine, the music is mighty, and the vocals... Sweet Mary's rack the vocals. Greg Graffin's voice has now become that bullhorn of aggression that melds with the lyrics to make Bad Religion a band apart.
There was a boy who had too many toys and an ache inside of his bones. He sought extrication.
The only way way I can accurately describe my love for this album is by showing you this image by cartoonist Robert Crumb. Yep, that is gross, but you know what? It fits. Best track? Oh, look, I wouldn't throw any of the tracks on this album out of bed for eating crackers, but the best of the bunch has got to be How Much Is Enough.
So when man got finally come to realize his serpent has become his demise. How much is enough to kill yourself?
I could dedicate the rest of this video to Suffer, but we got a lot of amazing albums to get to, so just buy it. Trust me, you'll love it.
It sometimes seems to me that you are a little bit not tired, but a little bit cynical and more without big hope.
More pessimistic, you mean?
Yeah.
More pessimistic than fuck Armageddon, this is hell?
So many theories, so many prophecies. One way to need is a change of ideas. When we
Suffer brought the fans back in droves. The Into the Unknown sound was dead and buried as it should be, and while they were touring Suffer, songwriting commenced once again, and the finished tracks would make up the next superb salvo by this group, No Control, cranking up the BPM while also penning a few mid-tempo tracks so you could keep at least part of your face. While I wouldn't consider it better than Suffer, it does continue in the same vein of melodic metallic punk with lyrics that require a trip or 15,000 to the dictionary, and the fans loved it, moving 80,000 copies, no small feat for an underground punk band, and it all comes down to the songs. Change of Ideas, Automatic Man. You've got to be kidding me, these songs rip, but the one that rips the most, for me at least, is Henchman, a song about breaking away and bettering the world on a personal level.
don't be a henchman, stand on your laurels, do what no one else does and plays good.
A message that's good to both bleeding heart liberals and red-blooded conservatives alike.
Having a certain party in the office isn't going to make a big change. It's not going to finish everything and everything suddenly magically becomes better. But it's a good place to start. And I think that more people getting involved in the political process in whatever way, shape, or form is important. I think young people have to start realizing that if they don't use their voices, then another generation is going to use it against them.
No Control. Don't say no to it. Next.
Flying through a dark
I have no clue how this band managed to put out killer material every year like clockwork, but I want to know the secret, because I've just been genre hopping, hoping something will get my creative juices flowing. This week it's power metal, but we're not here to talk about my Squidward Tentacles attempts at making music. We are here to talk about Against the Grain, another awesome album that runs the track that Suffer paved to begin with. But this time, we're taking the scenic route with a longer runtime and more interesting bits than No Control. And by interesting, I don't mean Into the Unknown interesting. Be it a vocal harmony, a guitar harmony, or a section of a song, my ears perked up way more listening to Against the Grain than No Control. This album, not No Control, also contains one of the band's most popular songs, 21st Century Digital Boy. Now, a lot of fans can get burnt out on band's most popular songs, but be it this version or the version on an album coming up, I cannot get enough of this awesome track. And that just goes for a lot of material on Against the Grain. Entropy, God Song, Unacceptable is not. Flat Earth Society, wow, these guys predicted the fucking future. But the best track has got to be the rockin' Operation Rescue. The song Latchkey Kids wishes it was.
The rectifier troopers, here the ones we've needed all these years to stop the heinous wrongdoings and verify our moral benevolence.
Against the Grain is an anthem album of individuality and is also another step up both in quality and the band's success, being the first album to break 100,000 copies. But during the tour, Pete Finestone would tender his resignation papers to go support his family and drum with the Fishermen, whoever the fuck they are. But the breakup wasn't bad, and they even thanked Finestone in their next album. And speaking of which...
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day in this neighbor. Would you be mine? Won't you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. And while we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Hi, neighbor.
With a new drummer behind the kit also came a new sound. Against the Grain was still in the stylings of Suffer and No Control, but 1992's Generator references those styles as more of a close relative. From the opening title track, you're pounded with more rock-orientated songs with slower tempos and catchier choruses. The band thought it was time to do something new, so they convened in Brett Guritz's new, larger studio to crank out this killer album. I love this album, even though it does sound different from the previous ones. If you're a big fan of the band's whiplash melodies, you will be a little disappointed, although songs like Fertile Crescent and Chimera will soothe your scorched asshole.
Come and see the brilliant light, don't let your emotions mask your sight. It's a manifestation of a deeper fight that affects me and you.
But if a more varied approach tickles your taint, then Generator is the album for you. Best track? I mean, with songs like Atomic Garden, Only Entertainment, and Two Babies in the Dark. Jesus, did Rob Zombie have a hand in making these titles? My gold sticker is gonna have to go to the catchiest the clap, Tomorrow.
It's the way they say it's gotta be. We spearhead and forge our destiny. Who do they represent? Who do you believe?
This album started the broadening of the Bad Religion sound, and that would continue into the next album.
There are certain people who will always have certain criteria for why they like the band. Once they moved from a 500-seat club to a 1,000-seat club, it was no longer my favorite band.
Right.
So there are all these weird criteria. I'm sure now that with the Atlantic move, there might be a few more who use the fact that we were on an independent label as a criterion for liking the band. But the fact is, the music isn't any different, and if you like us for the music, there's no reason not to be a Bad Religion fan.
I'm looking in, looking in, looking in, I'm looking in.
Recipe for Hate, the last album with Epitaph, for a bit at least, and their first album with new label Atlantic Records. With the new rock sound they acquired on Generator and the grunge explosion happening alongside it, the band decided to inject some of that new fresh sound into their style of music, even getting glorified mumbler Eddie Vedder to come along and sing on some songs.
So EV was made his way on the album. How did you guys coax him into doing that?
There wasn't a hell of a lot of coaxing.
Just a lot of money.
Yeah.
I saw a man on a big blue screen. He ruled the world economy.
Now, there's this thing in punk culture where if a band gets popular and breaks into the mainstream, they're deemed unworthy of leading the revolution or whatever the fuck those people believe. But I am no ahead and only care about one single thing. Is the music still good? And Recipe for Hate is okay. They didn't just add a bit of grunge to their sound, they smothered it with heaping tablespoons of plenty. While you still get classic Bad Religion tunes like Lookin' In, this album also starts with a 4-round bang, including the hit single American Jesus and my favorite track off the album, Portrait of Authority.
The portrait of authority. Portrait of authority. You tell me that's what I'm supposed to.
As for the rest of the material, while it's as killer as always, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think Generator was that much better. But hey, this album broke him into the mainstream, so I guess I'm the contrarian. Oh god, I've become the very thing I said to destroy. Ah well, while I may not hate Recipe for Hate, its grunge sound really isn't my thing. But if it's yours, then you'll love Recipe for Hate. Next.
For those who think that going on a major label was just to make our music more commercial, all you have to do is listen to the listen to the new record, and I think you'll come up with the conclusion that there was no intention of sounding like Pearl Jam or no intention of going mainstream.
While the dickiest of heads may scoff at the success of A Recipe for Hate in this album, I just sit back and laugh at that padlock on their open mind. Stranger Than Fiction is an interesting success story. With the band breaking it big with Recipe for Hate and its grunge-tinted sound, you'd think the band would continue down that trail and rake in the grunge payola, but you would be wrong, because Stranger Than Fiction brings back those soaring melodies and fast tempos that albums like Supper, No Control, and Against the Grain fucking perfected. It's an amazing album with deep cuts and fan favorites. Infected, The Handshake, my favorite version of 21st Century Digital Boy, and my favorite song, Tiny Voices. This album could have easily followed Against the Grain without a single person raising their eyebrows. Okay, I take that back. Maybe the song Slumber would have made a few people scratch their heads, but other than that, any one of these songs could fit on those late 80s, early 90s albums. But the big problem with this album is not the songs, the production, or the so-called selling out. It's more the den of drama that surrounds it, as before it was released, Brett Gurewitz left the band.
Everything was getting so intense that there was no way in the world I was going to be able to do Bad Religion and Epitaph at the same time.
I was pissed that he left. I mean, plain and simple, there was just it's like, if someone just says, I'm bailing, and you're a partnership, you get angry.
With The Offspring becoming a huge success, for some reason, Gurewitz was needed more at Epitaph than in Bad Religion. On top of this, his drug problems were coming back to the surface. The band were so salty that he left that Graffin began taking lyrical jabs at him, but Gurewitz was not taking that laying down.
It's good, so true, and I still hate you.
Up one successful album, but down one primary songwriter, the waters were choppy for Bad Religion. But what's not choppy is Stranger Than Fiction. It's a powerful piece of punk that pounds you perpetually. Buy it. Next.
Some of my anger I put into just moving forward with the band, maybe it's what saved the band. I tried to make the band just as good without him. Well, that didn't happen.
We now enter what is referred to as the post-Gurewitz era of Bad Religion. Replacing him with guitarist Brian Baker, Greg Graffin took over all of the songwriting duties. Now, I've heard these albums get ripped new assholes across the web, but I really hadn't listened to them a lot before making this retrospective. So, I took each and every one of these post-Gurewitz albums and listened to them with fresh ears and an open mind. What anybody should do when evaluating a band's worst material. And the first of these albums, The Gray Race, I thought it was okay. Greg Graffin does a great job with the songwriting, but you can't help but shake the feeling that something is missing. Gurewitz called this album uninspired, and while he may take it back, I won't. Apart from a few tracks, I couldn't pick most of this material out of a lineup. Yeah, that really didn't stick. Look, when a primary songwriter leaves a band, a part of that band's sound leaves with them. This is still Bad Religion, but it's Bad Religion watered down. Not Bud Light watered down, but watered down nonetheless. Best track? There are actually good tracks on this thing, even though I would lead you to believe there aren't. 10 in 2010, Nobody Listens, and my favorite track, Parallel. But other than that, you really aren't missing much. The Gray Race. Next.
We all know politicians only go just halfway there.
While this album does feature more co-writes than on The Gray Race, much like that album, 1998's No Substance just wallows in mediocrity. Hell, maybe even more than the Grey Race. It's not like you could use this album as a sleeping aid, but you could definitely use it as background noise, which should not be what a Bad Religion album is for. Best track? Well, honestly, I can't even remember the names of some of these tracks. I mean, if I had to pick, I would say the biggest killer in American history. But even though that song rocks, I don't find myself yearning after it. There's just really not a lot to talk about here. No substance. Fitting title. Next.
It's a long way.
With no substance failing to light a fart on fire, Graffin and Gerritz did get together in 1999 to write a song that would end up on the next Bad Religion album, The New America. The only co-write on the album, as Graffin and Graffin alone wrote the songs on this album. Produced by Todd Rundgren, a musician that Greg Graffin looked up to heavily, but when it actually came time to work with him, they just couldn't do that. This album, be it because of that or something else, has a weird energy to it. Be it the less political lyrics, weird choice for an album called The New America, to the more peppy sound, it's just an oddball album in the Bad Religion catalog. But unlike Generator, I just can't get into this album. And when it comes to the heavier songs like 1,000 Memories, look, I get that Graffin's divorce sucked, but this song sounds like something I'd write for another 24-hour Man album. I was confused as to why the post-Gerritz albums got all the criticism they got, but after listening to all three of them, I have to admit you guys were right. I really don't dig these albums, and I dig The New America the least. Next.
That was one of our goals when we set out to write the album, was to make an album that particularly the fans have been waiting to hear for a long time.
Yeah. I'll comment on the fact that, the record has been leaked to the internet early. And so a lot of the really hardcore fans have heard the whole record because they've gone to the trouble. Wait, I should be announcing this on TV now if even more people are going to do it. Oh, well.
The Atlantic years started off strong, but quickly died off. The band were miserable, so when Atlantic were dropping acts that sold less than 50,000 copies, even though the band was still selling more than that, they begged to be let go. So they were, and this split resulted in a return to Epitaph and Brett Gerritz's return to Bad Religion, baby.
The reason I wanted to come back is because I just love writing songs, and I needed to have I just can't seem to write songs outside of Bad Religion. I mean, I don't do, I'm really not a solo artist. Bad Religion's the only band I've ever been in, the only band I ever wanted to be in. And for me to do songwriting, excuse me, I do it, in the context of Bad Religion.
It wasn't the smoothest of restarts, as drummer Bobby Schayer had a rotator cuff injury and had to take his leave, but he would be replaced by Brooks Wackerman, and soon after that, in 2002, came The Process of Belief, a comeback album so good I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but no, it's just that awesome, returning to the give a fuck sound and the speed and the melody that all good Bad Religion albums should have. It's just, I can't even... Look, this album is just awesome, people. It's so nice that after 3 mediocre albums to actually get something that's honestly really good. Best track? That's gonna be hard. You got Kyoto Now, Materialist, the hit song Sorrow, but actually my favorite track has gotta be the second single, Broken.
She said, thanks but I'm broken. I guess you must have misspoken. What a laugh.
Believe me when I say The Process of Belief is a top to bottom beast that takes those post-Gerritz albums out back behind the woodshed and gives them a 12 gauge goodbye. Buy it, loser. Next. Now that Garrett's was back, the band was hotter than ever. The comeback album teared the roof off the mother sucker, and The Empire Strikes First, after a brief overture, tears into Titanic track after Titanic track. Inspired by George W. Bush, like I said, anything around this time was. It's just interesting to think that even though Bad Religion are a political band, they rarely have a set target.
And now here we are, 20-something years later, and it turns out that the thing we were railing against as little baby kids was the seeds of this conservative right-wing groundswell that ended up in preemptive war and George Bush being reelected behind an illegal war on foreign soil.
But that anger helps this album because I firmly believe that The Empire Strikes First is a better album than The Process of Belief. The performances are top-notch, the production is pounding, Greg Graffin's vocals are stronger, and the songs are way heavier, but not so heavy that the melody is hip-checked into the cheap seats. To Another Abyss, social suicide for all you gamers out there, atheist piece, but I really love the song God's Love.
Tell me where's the love in a careless creation when there's no love.
The fact that Green Day's overrated opus American Idiot is talked about more than this stellar album makes me want to drink the Jonestown Flavor Aid, it wasn't Kool-Aid, and take that spaceship to a place where this album is actually appreciated. One of my top 5 favorite Bad Religion albums. Pick it up, put it on, and pound your fist. Next. Because The Empire Strikes First was such a heaving beast of an album, they took some extra time to tour it, but when they went back into the studio, they didn't sound tired. Maybe it was because it was supposed to be part 2 of The Empire Strikes First? Nope, that's bullshit. New Maps of Hell is just another awesome modern Bad Religion album. The fact that this band has been going on for decades now and can still make great music is a testament to how talented these guys really are. That, or I guess they had to steal a few ideas from newer acts. I guess Green Day wasn't using that chorus, but regardless, this album is still killer. Scrutiny, Grains of Wrath, but my favorite track is the 10-ton swinging nuts of Before You Die. You don't need a map to find New Maps of Hell because if you already have good taste in music, you'll know where it is next. Work on the next album would take a while as Greg Graffin had to teach at UCLA. Oh, you didn't know? He's a professor. How dope is that?
Have many fans take your classes?
Not many of our fans. I mean, it's always funny because you assume, well, you know, the professor is going to be someone, if he's well known for other things, then those people will want to take the course, evolution course that popularizes an important science. It's for non-majors. It's for the entire university.
Oh, nice.
So it brings in people from all departments. However, a lot of them aren't music fans.
Oh.
And let's face it, they're there to learn something, and they're probably more worried about their grade than they are about the last Bad Religion album. So.
That, on top of touring commitments, meant a new album was a long time coming. But then, on their 30th anniversary, the Dissent of Man dropped, and... how can I say this without sounding like a complete hypocrite? There's a little too much melody for me here. Now, don't get me wrong, I love when music has melody, but I have a limit. I wouldn't consider Bad Religion to be a pop-punk band, and anyone who does should be exempt from breeding, but this is the closest they've ever gotten to sounding like a pop-punk band. But it's still a killer album, just a little too fucking fluffy for me. Best track? That's gonna have to go to one of the heavier ones, The Meeting of the Minds. The Dissent of Man, while not my preferred Bad Religion listen, is still an awesome album. Next.
Greg is a science professor, and Brett runs Epitaph. But do you guys have any other side jobs yourselves?
I'm my own gardener. Brian watched me do it. I'm terrible.
Yeah.
I fired myself. It's
So you're
true.
unemployed.
I am now unemployed.
I'm a llama.
The year is 2013, and the breakup rumors are a-spreadin'. Greg Graffin said the band were working on a new album, and after it was done, they'd go out and get real jobs. Now, we all know that was a lie, probably a joke, but this isn't even the first time this kind of thing has happened. Back when the New America was getting recorded, it was allegedly going to be titled The Last Word, as people thought the band were breaking up then. But if this were to be their last album, it would be a great album to go out on. True North, much like The Process of Belief, brings back that perfect balance of melody and might that I've been repeating fucking ad nauseum in this video. Take a drink every time I do. But it's true. It's got the speed, it's got the sound, it's got the melody, it's got the might. This album is just amazing. It's quintessential Bad Religion from toes to titties. Best track? Well, that's gonna have to be the middle finger that is fuck you.
As most flawed men I want to do, just say fuck you. Stop loving road. A man is done.
Am I the only one who thinks this song would fit like a glove on How Could Hell Be Any Worse? Hell, it'd be a hell of a lot better album if it was. Pity left, please. True North is a fantastic Bad Religion album, and much how Against the Grain was the first album to break 100,000 copies, this album was the first to break the top 20 on Billboard, becoming the band's most successful album. Fans old and new were hoping the band wouldn't follow through on those breakup rumors. And while they didn't, longtime guitarist Greg Hetson would leave, and Brooks Wackerman would join Avenged Sevenfold. Lame. Replaced by Mike Dimkick and Jamie Miller on guitar and drums respectively, work on a new album would slowly but surely commence.
Hey, let's jump around to the reggae sound of the paranoid style. Hey.
With Greg continuing to teach and working on a solo album, it would be 6 long years before a new Bad Religion album would be dunked on our heads. The single The Kids Are Alt-Right, yeesh, was so hilariously bad that fears were raised, but in 2019, when The Age of Unreason was unveiled, it did not disappoint, despite being slathered in 50 fucking layers of Orange Man bad.
Grab your partner, do-si-do. Populism is a sold-out show.
But a lot of people still like that kind of stuff, and they will love this album. Me, on the other hand, I just like it. Much like the Dissent of Man, it does steer a little bit too far into melody and filler at times, but the song that stands in objection to that is the ripping Faces of Grief. That and songs like Old Regime will keep your attention if you're anything like me. Age of Unreason, more like, for some reason. Okay, we're done here. Well, that does it for another episode of the Retrospective series. I thank you all once again for sitting with me, and until next time, I'm Liam Winfield. Hail Bad Religion, keep on rockin'.
I don't hate anything about Brooks. Is it possible I might not ever come upon something I hate about him? Just watch it. I'm watching you, Brooks. Where's my makeup? Where's my scarf?
We're rolling.
I told you.